We've got Trey. Trey's coming in very soon. Trey is in Singapore. He is probably the first other black diver that I ever met. Um, so yeah, we're just gonna talk, see how it goes. Can you
What's
hear?
occurring?
Hey, what's up, bro?
How you doing?
I know, right? Just chilling, just chilling, just chilling. So I actually never told you. So one of the first when I started diving, before we even get to this, like I was just telling everybody before you join, for the next few weeks, I'm just talking to black divers, brothers and sisters. Then we expand that to other adventurers. We expand that to other. Yeah, we'll just see how it goes. There's no
Yeah,
agenda right now. It's
cool,
just
cool,
fun.
cool. That's good. That
We're
works
doing
for me.
fun things.
That works for
Um,
me.
Trey's right now in Singapore, right?
I'm in Singapore.
Singapore, it is 9 a.m., 9:10 a.m. It's 6:10 for me in LA.
Yep.
Um, when I
Mind you,
first,
it's not only just 9 a.m. It's actually 9 a.m. on the 11th of August.
so I'm talking to Trey. Trey's in the future. I'm in the past. We're time traveling.
You can watch this later, Nick.
You know, all these things. It's crazy. So when I started diving, I think I did a post with like Niger diver or African diver or something like that.
Hmm.
Then it there was probably maybe one other picture, and it was you in the Middle East, I think. Then you responded to one of my posts and like, oh, there's more of us.
There's more of us.
It's a weird thing. It was in that moment I realized like, things like girls that scuba have a place because there's a community that needs to just kind of like really embrace everybody and push us up. So I'm not even going to go. Let's start, and please, Trey, introduce yourself.
So my name is actually, well, my full name is Atari Mujakporue. I'm originally from Nigeria, and everybody calls me Trey. So you can call me Trey too.
That's what.
Um, I'm at Profile One on Instagram. That's PR0FILE1 on Insta, and pretty much that on everywhere else. So if you like PlayStations too, yeah, same thing. But I'm into Call of Duty, so if you're playing anything else, don't come near me. I think I've only owned one game for about 9 years. Um, but yeah, so that's me. Come Trey. Originally from Nigeria, as I said before. Used to live in the UK, hence the accent, and now live in Singapore.
How's Singapore, by the way? It's one place I've been wanting to go to that I've just never been to.
So Singapore is epic. Um, it's a surreal kind of epic. But don't get it twisted. Singapore is different.
Mm,
Uh, if you are, everybody likes to think themselves very culturally aware. So
hmm
if you're lucky enough to be privileged and have traveled a lot, either via of your own volition or via work, all of that kind of stuff, we tend to believe ourselves quite culturally aware. But Asia is something different. Um, it was a steep learning curve for a few months, but you know what? I think I've settled in quite well now, and I absolutely love it. It's 31 degrees every day. Doesn't matter whether it's raining or it rains every day somewhere in Singapore. But yeah, 31 degrees every single damn day.
31 degrees centigrade. That's like I don't know, 98 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. It's hot. It's hot basically.
Yeah.
And there you go. There you go. Trey here. We've got Trey, fellow scuba divers. I don't know if anyone missed it. I am Ed. I dive, and a few years ago, actually, when I started diving, I put in a hashtag like Ninja Diver randomly just to see what's going on, what's out there, and somehow Trey and I connected, and I had this light bulb and like, whoa, there's literally more of us, because I was telling Trey we're just having a conversation before this that in the hundreds of dives, I can I can only think of two other black people that I've met on a dive boat. But that's besides the point. It's not. This conversation is really not political. It's more about talking to dive personalities like Trey. Trey, introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. Another my countryman right here. You know, if anybody is wondering, we're both Niger Pekins.
That's right. That's right.
And Trey, you're diving. How did you get started? Like, what actually
So
made you do
diving.
it?
That's the what made me. So for as long as I can remember, there are things that I've always thought were cool.
Hmm.
Flying, uh, diving. Literally, there's a whole bunch of other things, but flying and diving and
Number
ice
one, number two.
snowboarding and yeah, all this kind of crazy thing. I've always thought these things were just really cool things to do. And I remember my roommate went to go learn how to. Oh yeah, so I used to have to travel 3 hours to work once upon a time, and I used to sit in the car with a guy called George. George is from New Zealand, and George was an avid diver. And he used to have all these dive magazines. So George and I pick him up. He used to live down the road from me. I pick him up, and we drive like 3 hours to where we were. Work for a
Wait,
consultancy there.
one way?
Yeah, 3 hours one way.
Woohoo! Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
all right.
3 hours one way. It was like an hour and a half to get out of the city, and then it was like maybe an hour and a bit to where we need to go. Once you're on the motorway. But anyway, so George, and he used to give me all these diving magazines, and I'd read them, and I'd see like these really cool equipment, and I was totally taken. Fast forward probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years
Oh
after,
wow.
that, that's when I thought, you know what? I'd been going on these holidays and I've been doing these try dives in different places all around the world. And there was this one time I was in St. Lucia, I think it's probably, let me see, probably 2008 or so. I was in St. Lucia, I was on holiday, and I thought, you know what?
Hmm.
I've been doing these try dives. Let me go, let me see what this whole course is about. So went, did the try dives, and the guy was like, hey, listen, I mean, like, you've done you seem to be really good at this thing. Why don't you just stop doing try dives and do like qualifications?
There are only so many try dives you can do.
I said, exactly right. So, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I signed up to do the qualification. I started studying. So I did all my theory exam. I did all the online stuff while I was there. I
Right.
went for a couple more try dives as well. And then sort of, I didn't have enough time to do the pool classes, right? So I didn't have
Right.
time to do those. So confined water classes I couldn't do because the holiday, I run out of holiday days. So I went back to the UK and did a reverse referral to the UK. So I
The
did
Caribbean.
my
That's interesting.
yeah, from the Caribbean, went back to the UK and did it with these wonderful people here. I think you can see it,
Oh yeah. Oh wait, it's
right?
kind of backwards.
Oyster diving. It's oyster diving.
Oyster diving. Okay,
Oyster
that's
diving.
it.
Yeah. So I did with oyster diving. So I did my confined sessions there. I did my open water sessions there. I did it in a lake called Raisbury.
All right. Do
Really
you
cool.
guys do like quarries or?
Oh, so Raisbury is a natural lake. Yes, I've
Huh.
dived at a few quarries in the UK as well, but it's a natural lake in an area of outstanding beauty, as they call it in the UK, which
British
basically,
beauty.
yeah, yeah, no, right. and and on a good day, the visibility is amazing.
Mm.
Um, on a good day, the visibility is great. On a bad day, the visibility is pretty much this much, half a meter in front of your eyes and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that makes
but
sense.
yeah, the bad days is when you've got loads of students in the water because it's a massive training ground. So if you look on, I think it's Paddy Earth or Scuba Earth or something like that, you'll see that Raisbury Dive Centre in London, in the UK, is probably the most popular dive site in Europe or
Oh
something to
wow,
that effect. Something
that's
really weird.
that's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's so I did it there, and I'd been hung out with the oyster diving guys, joined the dive club, went diving everywhere, and from there progressed and did my advance with oyster, did my rescue diver with oyster, became a dive master, worked for oyster, and an instructor
And,
for oyster.
you did all of that back in England?
So I
Not
did all of that back in England. Yeah.
okay, because I remember one time you're in Egypt. You've been to Egypt a bunch of times, but this particular time you're in Egypt, and I think maybe it was shortly after you got your instructor. So for non-divers or people new to diving, there's a core path. There's the recreational diver, there's a professional. Trey is a pro, is an instructor. He teaches
I'm a dive
people,
pro.
yeah, teaches people how to dive. Um, well, we're gonna have a whole different story about that later, but today we're focused on Trey. Well, at one point, I remember when I first started, my pool session was actually one of the hardest. The first pool session was okay, but when I started after the first dive, my instructor, in his infinite wisdom, realized that I was crushing my tanks because I was sucking all the air. So, so he hooked me up with a Steel 100,
This,
and I remember going into the pool the next time and literally just backflipping and sinking. It was probably the best wake up call. Like, hey, wake up, young man, wake up. What are you doing? So
buoyancy.
in those 2 seconds, I was like, nah, I think I'm good with this stuff, man. Black people don't swim anyways. What am I doing here? And that's leading me to ask you, like, was there any point, because you're pretty experienced, you're pretty advanced, was there any point from when you started to where you are now that you thought about, I gotta quit this stuff. This stuff ain't mine.
Um, yeah,
Really?
and yeah, very quickly. It happened. It happened a couple of times, and funnily enough, it never happened. It never happened during my during dives by myself or when I was learning how to dive. It happened after I became an instructor.
Hmm.
So there is one thing to dive, and there's one thing to be responsible for people's lives while diving. That's a
Big
whole
difference.
different ball game.
Yeah.
And I remember being taking out a bunch of people for the first time. I think it was either my first or second time, and one of them had like literally just disappeared from the group. Now, there's something. Now, so
Yeah, that happens.
we teach on platforms, right, in Raisbury because the bottom is really really silty, and
Right.
new divers we tend to call them underwater Bambis. So, just to put that into context, you've seen I don't know if you've seen these what sort of animal documentaries where the deer is first of all born and then it can barely stand up and its legs
Ah,
are all over the place. Basically, that's what we call new divers because their buoyancy is all over the place. They don't know where to put their feet. Guys, listen.
right.
Controlling your body underwater is nothing like it is on land. You can be the most dexterous person on land, the most agile person on land. But in water, the first time, underwater, the first time, it is not so easy. It takes a while. You need to stop fighting the water. But anyway, underwater Bambis. And then they kick up the silt because their fins are all over the place. And then all of a sudden, visibility goes from this much to pretty much zero.
Yeah, and it kills it for everybody.
And it kills it for everybody. But it's not necessarily a terrible thing, right? Because if you're used to diving in that particular area, you kind of know where everything is. You've got a dive computer on, you know how deep you are and all of that kind of stuff. And the platforms are fairly large as well.
Right.
But anyway, I somehow lost a student on the platform. The student had drifted to the edge of the platform, and I just didn't know where the hell they were. So here I am, freaking out completely. I'm thinking I've killed somebody. Um, but then your training kicks in, right? It's like this is one
Yeah.
thing you remember. Look around for 1 minute, and then you know what?
Go
Look
back
around
up.
for 1 minute and go back up. So there was a dive master there as well, who I completely ignored, even though I should have used the dive master to send him around to go look for the student. But
Right.
it's like your first, second time, and you're kind of like so in the zone, and all of a sudden you do your count, and they're not there.
I can only imagine.
So that really freaked me out. At this point, I was like, what, this is not for me. But I'm like, dude, I just spent like years studying for this thing, right? I
Mm,
spent so much money on this thing, and what the hell is wrong with me, right?
yeah.
So I sat down with a couple of other instructor friends, and they go, "Look, it's normal, right? Just remember your training, and like really, your is uh, training is top notch, right? You remember that training, everything's good."
And that's amazing you said that because like I always preach that every diver needs to be, yeah, they're experienced divers, but every diver needs to be at least rescue because when you're diving, you're most likely diving with other people, and it's not just about being conscientious, being conscious of yourself, but also being conscious of other divers,
Indeed.
and that's why I think rescue is pretty important. But we're not here to promote the certs. We're here to talk
Sure.
about you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that was a pretty gnarly experience. I can remember when I was doing my dive master, my DMC, and I didn't actually lose the candidate. I just thought there were sharks in front of us. So I was about to bail before before the sharks got to my students. But it actually just turned out to be huge California sea bass. They are like 500 pounders,
I
seriously
heard
huge.
about those things.
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures later. And that's one experience that just kind of wakes you up. But
That's
you've been
crazy.
around the world diving. Indonesia. You gave me tips about Indonesia last year. You've been in
Yeah,
Egypt. You've
I've been
gone
in
diving
Egypt.
in motherland. Um, we're gonna go on a trip with the League of Extraordinary Black Divers, but
This is going to
COVID
be
said,
excellent.
Corona said, hold my beer. So that's
COVID has just destroyed everything. I just sent you a link quickly.
yeah.
Actually just tagged you on Instagram when you're talking about sharks. So this is something I filmed um, in Egypt a few years ago.
Egypt. I saw that. I saw
Yeah.
that. That was amazing. That was amazing. I'm gonna pull it up. I'll stitch it into the final cut once we get
Cool.
this. But you've been all over the world. You've actually one of the fun things about training and learning to dive, having your home dive spot in a place like England or California, which California is deceptively cold. Is that when you go to the rest of the world, eh, you're walking like a boss. So what's been your most interesting encounter on the water so
My
far?
my most interesting encounter. I think there've probably been a couple. Um, but I'll tell you the funniest one though. So the funniest I think was we'd done this dive in Egypt, and I think it was called the Deep South or something, and we were at a place
Mm.
called St. John's Caves, and they call it St. John's Caves because all of the sort of underwater features, the coral is sort of like form these swim throughs, and you can just go through them for ages, you know.
Oh, that's cool.
And basically, you kind of really have to follow the guide because you don't want to get lost in the in sort of in the coral system
If
because
you're
there's some
smart, you
places.
follow the guide.
Yeah, so you follow the guide. So there's some places where you can't actually just come up above the corals. You just have to swim through. So you follow the guide. So I remember this thing so clearly. There's like a whole line of us, right, going through this cave-ish system, overhead
Hmm.
corridor, whatever it was. And you could see the far end of it, and then you could see somebody just gesticulating, going, and you're like, what the hell? And then every now and then you just see these massive bubbles everywhere. And then the person would swim around and go, and then the person behind them, you'd suddenly see another massive bubble, just like loads of bubbles, as opposed to, the steady stream of bubbles
Yeah.
that come up, right? Anyway, of course, it got to my turn, right? So I just get to this point, and I'm seeing people gesticulating, going, and literally, I look at where they're gesticulating at, and there is this absolutely man-sized barracuda.
Wow.
Its mouth, it's just like that hanging in the water column. Huge, absolutely huge. Eyes like saucers. And it's right there. And it's
Just
just right there.
and is it like in the swim through where you guys have to go past it?
No, it's literally it's in the swim through, you have to go past it, but it's right at the end. So there's a bit of coral there, and you have to
Wow.
go under. And as soon as you come under like that, you see the barracuda just sitting there, and it's so close to you. And you know how everything's magnified underwater, right? So for all I know,
Yeah.
it's not that big, but it was absolutely enormous. And the shock, right? Of course, the bubbles just go. So there's a whole line of just every single person completely freaked out on that dive. There's about 12 of us or something.
And all it takes is one person is just a domino effect. Everybody in the group is like, well, I always tell people that I'm underwater, I'm 6'6", but on land, I'm like 5'11" and 3/4. So,
That must be enormous. You see the size of my fins.
that's amazing. Uh, and this was in Egypt.
Yeah, this is in Egypt. This
Wow.
is in Egypt. Um,
That's amazing encounter. I remember a couple years ago, I was in Cozumel for Thanksgiving. Similar, not as intricate as what you just described, but it was like
yeah.
a bunch of swim throughs, and you kind of go. I wasn't even on in this group. My group had passed it, but the other group told me they had this huge moray eels,
Oh, really?
huge green, big teeth, and they go through the swim through, and the moray eel is kind of like, well, the first group passed, somebody silted up, then an eel comes out
Oh,
like,
1 second, Ed. Sorry, guys. It's
yeah,
morning here in Singapore, by the way, and McLean has just arrived.
oh, no worries.
1 second.
And
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
and while you're doing that, guys,
The
uh,
sun, the
it
sun
is
is
morning in Singapore. We are in California. It is 6:30 p.m. So I am kind of indulging in some coffee. So don't judge me, but you can judge me. It's okay.
What kind of coffee are you drinking?
Hey, coffee's coffee, right?
I've got a whole day of work ahead of me. You're trying to make me drink your kind of coffee. It's just there sitting, staring at me right now, actually.
So all the good times when you go out and like check out different things around the world and dive. By the way, if you're just joining, this is Trey. He is right now in Singapore, my countryman from another country, and we are both divers. He's actually a dive leader, as an instructor, and we are spending the evening just chatting. Well, evening for me, morning for
Morning
him,
for me.
chatting about dive experiences and mostly about him. He's been around the world. He's just told us a really amazing experience he had in Egypt. And wow, Singapore. That was close to ground zero. So how has C-19 affected you?
Do you know what? This place is. You asked me earlier on how do I find Singapore. I mean, I was like, I love it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not for everybody. Okay, so
Mm.
uh,
Long
I,
term or just visiting?
oh, long for me, definitely for at least a couple of years, at least, right?
Okay.
Um, so for the most part, I'm going to be here for a good few years. But Singapore is great. The thing is, it's a very law-abiding, should I say, a very law-abiding society. Um,
Everybody's good at two shoes.
yeah, you don't really get the chance. People police themselves,
Wow.
right? People police themselves. There's a lot of everybody's a Karen.
That's
Yeah,
that's
everybody's
interesting to hear.
everybody's everybody's a Karen. But in a society where everybody's Karen, does Karen really exist?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, it can be difficult at times, um, but everybody just toes the party line. Toe the party line, right? Lockdown means lockdown. Stay at home means stay at home. Wear your mask means wear your mask. You can't leave your house without your mask. Like you can't even get into my condo roundabouts now without having your ID number taken or your temperature taken. And I can't
Wow.
have more than 5 visitors at a time to my apartment.
That's the exact opposite with LA because everybody's like lockdown, and then LA were like, how about I just have a party at home? And Florida's like, hold my beer.
No, none of that's happening. Like we have ambassadors on the street, right?
Wow.
They will, if you're not standing a meter apart, they will tell you to stand a meter apart.
We have like I hate to digress, but we have people that go to like the DMV or like go to get license plates or just go into public places um, and go like, I can't wear my mask because I have whatever, like just move on.
So
So that's pretty interesting
you,
to know.
as an immigrant, you will lose your visa here.
Seriously.
I know people in Singapore that during the lockdown period, because you could go out and you could buy food, right? So these
Hmm.
guys went and bought food, and they were basically just, you're supposed to buy your shit and go home.
Right.
They were hanging out, as in they bought their stuff and they stood and chatted for a while. No, they got prosecuted, they got fined $10,000, and then they got kicked out of the country. I know another
Wow.
person who had 6 people over at his home when he was supposed to have had only 5. Now, mind you, the security guard takes details of all of this stuff, right?
Hmm.
And, he had 6 people in his home. What happened? Everybody got fined $10,000, and they got a week to leave the country.
That
Follow the
actually sounds
rules.
like a good business plan because we got all these Hollywood Hills mansion parties with like 200 people. Let's see, 10,000 by 200, 2 million ish or 200, no, 2 million. Yeah, we can get. Oh, thank
That's
you.
some good money.
I will I will snitch out to I will snitch out to the authorities. But that's awesome. And
But listen, I have
so
a question for you. I have a question for you.
yeah,
What made you get into diving?
it's something I've always wanted to do. I was talking to this local LA mag the other day. I grew up in Lagos, a little bit between 6 and 12, on and off. I spent time in England, but the inspiration for diving really started in Lagos, in Nigeria. We'll go to Bar Beach. What's the one at the Bar Beach? We'll go to the beach growing
Yeah.
up for everything: Easter, Christmas, birthday, everything. And by 5, 6, I was starting to get the grasp the concept of there's more to everything than what I see,
Hmm.
and I'll pretty much get curious about the ocean. But of course, like you go to the beach, you stay on the beach.
You stay
You
on the
know,
beach.
you don't go into the water. I remember the
The waves will
two.
carry you.
Yeah,
The waves will carry you. Carry you.
I
Only have 3 chances.
if you go, yeah, I'm gone now. And there were two very memorable experiences. Actually, a little bit weird, actually. One was this lady. I don't remember who she was and why or what happened, but she was dragged out of the beach. Something had bit her, and she was like bleeding. One of her legs was kind of torn off, and she was like just bleeding. They were bringing her out, and there was this other random guy that just happens to be swimming in the ocean. He was just going, and to the point where we could barely see him. And normal people are like, I am never going into that water again. But me, I was like, huh, what was under there? Huh? Tell me, what was under there? So that was growing up, right? Fast forward, living all over the place, Connecticut, New York, DC, Philly, eventually California. And I was sailing a lot. I was just on the water a lot. Then I started to wonder,
What is underwater?
what is underwater, right? Exactly. And when I actually signed up for diving, I didn't think I would be an avid diver. I just thought, oh, I'll sign up, do the regular thing, then just do the like, occasional like Cancun diving or whatever.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I was kind of like just doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And yeah,
There you're in it.
now I'm kind of in it. Like I know there are things tech diving. I'm not sure I want to do. Um,
Didn't you just get a wing recently?
yeah, absolutely. I
Yes, good
I
over for
like
you.
to emulate the tech divers, but I'm like, man, I got 2 kids and doing my insurance is set up right now. I gotta like take it and be
Kind of work.
careful. And that's how I got in. Like it's something I've always wanted to do. It's just one of those things. You're like, yeah, you get to whenever, like you do it whenever, like Then one day I just kind of signed up and waited 3 months. I just signed up, went to Nigeria, came back. They're like, oh, you gotta. I was fortunate. I had my instructor. I had the same instructor from open water to advanced to rescue. He's like a super high advanced tech instructor diver. So I actually got a lot of my gear gear configuration from him.
From him.
I got a lot of my mannerisms from him. Him and his wife, they're actually pretty advanced, pretty like they're like tech instructors. One of like 10,000 people that teach certain things in the world is like it's pretty
That's
cool. But it was amazing. And then diving in California, the first 2 years, I've probably dove in California the entire time. Diving in California sounds amazing, but in reality, diving in California is 80% of the time shit. You know, Viz is
oh,
bad.
oh, because I've always wanted to go dive in California, right? So there's kelp farms and all of that kind of stuff.
Ooh,
See, now
that's
that
pretty
stuff,
cool.
even though there's a good chance of you being eaten, but quite frankly, I don't really care. Um,
That's the 10% that's cool.
oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's where I want to go. And then I want to do some rigs.
It's pretty cool. The rigs are probably my favorite local dive. Um, but in California, if you dive every week, if you keep diving, eventually you're gonna have good viz, good weather, a good temp. But for the most part, the water is deceptively cold.
So what
Um,
temperature is it?
Typically anywhere from like 55 to 65,
That
roughly
Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit. So
What's that
I don't
in
know,
centigrade? Let me see. 55,
10, 20, 10 to 20,
10 to 20. That's 12.
12.
That's wetsuit weather.
Oh
What
yeah,
do you,
I always do 7 mil in California. I don't know if you're not a California diver and you're watching this in California, you dive 7 mils. You dive 7 mil. You dive a hood. I have an extra vest on, and yeah, but
so, so here's the interesting thing about this, right? Because you're complaining that you have to dive in a 7 mil.
yeah, you guys do
Let
dry
me tell you,
suits.
let me tell you a story. For whatever the reason is, I don't know. All my qualifying dives for whatever I was doing, be that my open water, advanced, whatever it was, I ended up doing them in either February or in November.
Mm,
Those are the two coldest months in the UK.
you just like to mess
If you
yourself up.
if you've never seen a guy, a black guy go blue, right? That was probably the first. My lips, my fingers were so numb. And mind you, I was actually in a dry suit.
Wow,
So we're looking at water temperatures of about, I don't know, 7 degrees.
that sounds cold.
Yeah, that's
That
five
sounds cold.
five to 7 degrees centigrade, right? It's cold. I mean, there's some mornings you're out there and um, there's frost on the ground. It's crazy.
Wow. It, yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna complain. I'm not gonna complain anymore. Cause it's funny because one time I was doing a dive just on a coast. This that day is typical California. It's like maybe 5 feet. Typical coastal California. So 5 feet, and the guy was like, "Oh, what's the viz like?" I'm like, "Ah, it's kind of crap. It's like 5 feet." The guy
Yeah.
goes, "Oh my God, that's amazing! Like, where are you from?" He's like Idaho or Iowa, one of them. I'm like, "Ah,
Yeah.
that explains it." But but yeah, I'm not gonna complain anymore.
No.
But the funny thing is, after California, the first place I went diving outside of California was Iceland. Um,
You did the what's it called?
Silfra.
You did Sifra. That's
After
like
that, I said I'm absolutely doing warm water. I'm,
you really was
I'm
that was dry suit, right? They gave you a dry suit while you were there.
yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
actually the reason I did my dry suit cert. Just at the time, I was like, hopefully one day I go to Iceland soon, and I don't want to have to think about the cert while I'm there,
Yeah.
because it's also like ridiculously expensive. So I'm like, I'll do the dry suit in California, and when I got to Silfra, it just happened. Like I think I'm gonna go to Iceland. So I got to Iceland was like within a week or two. So it was almost like an impromptu trip, but it was
Yeah.
way worth it because it's probably my most interesting dive experience. There was nothing in the water, but just touching two continents.
Touch two continents. So do you know why there's nothing in the water?
Other than being that cold, it was like 36 degrees. It's like 1 degree centigrade.
Yeah, but other than that, because loads of things can live below that temperature, right?
Right.
There's nothing in the water because there is no nutrients in the water. So nothing lives there, and that's why the water is so crystal clear. You can see for miles. And that's why the
That
viz is so good.
that's why Trey's an instructor because he knows what he's talking about. I was just like, yeah, ain't nothing here. I'm good. Oh yeah, I'm good. That's why Trey knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. So the water is crystal clear. There's no nutrients in the water, right?
It's one of those places like if you're diving, you think you know typically you dive in, there's like silt and random things in the water. This one was just clear. It's I feel like it's the next best thing to being an astronaut. Like
Yeah.
there's just nothing other than the bubbles.
It's nothing.
Nothing. Maybe some
Right.
algae, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, long story for another time because the my dive buddy that zipped up my dry suit didn't zip it all the way up. Um,
The white error.
so I came out like I felt like I was gonna have pneumonia, but we'll save that for another day. But yeah,
Diving mishaps. We can have a
co-
whole session on diving mishaps.
COVID has been brutal. We're gonna do a league of black divers, motherland return to Africa dive this
We,
summer.
we, we need to do. We were going to do that.
We,
That was going to happen.
yeah, we will eventually, but you know, COVID said, "Hold my beer, y'all ain't going nowhere."
I
So
know, right?
I'm here in LA. Trey's out in Singapore. Trey just told us about how locked down Singapore is. Like, yeah, in Singapore, everybody's just carrying it out and policing themselves, you know. But in Florida and California, we're going, yeah, let's do it, party. So
It's brutal.
after this COVID, where's the first place you think you're gonna go dive? I know you just
The
cancel
nearest, dude, it's not even hard, right?
like whatever,
I have,
anything. I don't
I
care.
have options. I can get to Thailand. I can get to Thailand. I can get to Bali. I can get to Malaysia. And right now, the decision is a very simple one. How fast can I get to the nearest dive site? Now, all of these places are between, I don't know, Malaysia's half an hour away. Thailand is like an hour 40 away. Indonesia is 2 hours away.
Oh,
But
that's
the point
amazing.
is, how fast can I get to the nearest dive site,
That
right?
that's one thing I feel California because California beats Singapore and because ain't nobody paying attention, so we can kind of get out to dive. But Tony just said we should definitely come dive in Lagos. Oniru Beach is sweet.
So yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
please tell them
Oniru Beach
about
is
Scuba Lagos.
6 Mile Rec is better than Oniru Beach, right? 6 Mile Rec.
Yeah,
Is better. I have friends that dive at 6 Mile Rec and a few other places with there's a dive outfit based out in Lagos.
Scuba Lagos.
Yeah, Scuba Lagos. Yeah,
Yeah,
Scuba Lagos. Pretty good. They do lots of other stuff as well. But yeah, they're pretty good. I have a friend that dives with them all the time. So that's cool. Yeah.
yeah. Cancun is all right.
Yeah, I've
Letitia,
done Cancun.
Cancun is good. Did Cozumel and like Tulum, the Yucatan,
Tulum.
the
Yeah.
cenotes.
So you did
Those are
the cenotes.
yeah, they're pretty good.
This, see, that's
That's
another place that's out of the world. Did you do the what's it called? You know, there was this haze over the water. There's one
oh
of the
yeah,
cenotes you can do where literally it looks like you're diving through a cloud, and you
right.
get through this layer, and there's just all sorts of dead things that have been dead for like hundreds of years there.
I thought it was my mask messing up. So I mean, they briefed us about it, but it's like you know the fresh water meeting the salt water and all the sulfur and leaves and dead things just kind
Dead
of
stuff.
stay in that one layer.
Yeah. So
I'm
there's
like,
two things.
what's wrong with me?
So there's two
Is that
things.
thing they told us
So
about?
where salt water meets
Listen
fresh
up, people.
water.
That's why listen up. Just listen up to
So
Trey.
there's
Yeah.
two things, right? Where salt water meets fresh water, you get something called a hydrocline,
Hmm.
right? And basically, it looks as if you've ever been on acid, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been on acid, it's basically just think
We're not
blurry
promoting it.
vision.
We're just saying, you know,
Just
just in
saying,
case, you know.
just
Wink,
blurry
wink.
vision. Yeah, exactly. You get real blurry vision. But
Yeah.
similarly, where warm water meets cold water, you get a thermocline, and that's also equally blurry. So you can be diving along, and all of a sudden there's just this, everything disappears and it's all blurry and you can't see anything, just shadows, there's no detail. And the water temperature will suddenly change, right?
Right.
So once you make it through that, everything's hunky
Yeah.
dory cool, but it can be really disorientating at times. But the coolest part is literally you could be diving along, you could put your arm up like that, and then that will be colder than where the rest of your
Exactly.
body is. Yeah.
That was the trippiest part because at the time when I did it, I was diving in Cozumel. It was open water, drift dives, everything is pretty open. Then I go to Tulum for a day, and the next thing I know, I'm in like this space this big. Like I could literally just fit myself in my tank. One person at a time. We go through the cavern. Cave diving is probably something else I don't have an interest in doing. I just don't. But
Yeah,
caverns are
it seems a
interesting.
bit, it seems a bit much for me.
So I go in and it's pretty tight. And it literally took me like 5 minutes to figure myself out. Like, like suck it up. You're a goddamn DM, like suck it up and
Mhm.
do this thing. So that was amazing, and I'm glad you've experienced it. Tony will come to Lagos very soon. We'll come do the 6 mile wreck,
6 Mile Wreck.
6 mile wreck, South Tommy and Principe. In fact, we're gonna dive all corners of Africa. Watch
We
out,
need to do that. We need to do
the
that.
the League of Afri-born divers, or
Yes.
I don't know if you're born in Africa, but
So
African
let's just
divers.
let's just reappropriate the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
There you go, LXG. Well,
There
we've
you
got we've got LXG coming for you, yeah. So
Yeah, we have, haven't we? We can sort that out. Be well easy. But here's a question for you, right? So here's a question. Why do you think that there aren't as many um, black divers?
that's a good question. I think it's the same reason. With every stereotype, there's an iota of truth, and there are tons of reasons we could go into why that started. But it's the same reason. I mean, I've gotten on boats that I've actually been asked point blank, "Can you swim?"
Gosh, I've been asked that. There's a,
So,
I always get, there's a moment of pride for me when they ask you for your, because when you go diving.
ooh,
Letitia, we've seen your question. We'll answer it in a second. But there's a moment of pride for me, and it was increasing and increasing every time I got a new certificate, where they say, yeah, what's your what qualification are
what's
you diving with?
age? You drop that pro card.
And I drop the pro card, and they look at you. Sometimes they look at you once, they look at you twice. And, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I dropped my black card. The dive master card actually happens to be black, or mine
Yeah.
happens to be. So I drop it in. Typically, I go, "Where'd you get this from?" Like, where'd you do your DM? I'm like, California. And California does have a reputation because there are a lot of local divers. Most people that are from California or that know of California, California does have like intense conditions.
Yeah.
Um, and one of my mentor, my instructor, didn't let me get it easy. Like he made me work my ass out for it. So
Yeah.
like I go to places like Hawaii, like, what you got?
Yeah, I never recognize. So the one thing I learned the hard way. I learned diving in UK waters, and they can be tough and can be unforgiving. But there's one thing I tell all my students, apart from the actual lie, I tell them when they finally hit that really cold water. When I say, "Don't worry, the water is not cold. You just haven't
Mm,
warmed up yet." Um,
mm,
I tell them that if you can dive here, you can dive anywhere in the world,
same thing.
because you're dealing with you manage to qualify and dive in water that is less than perfect, that is not, it's not what the brochures say it is. It's cold, the visibility isn't great, but yet you manage to dive in this thing and you
Hmm.
qualify. And those are probably going to be the hardest dives that you will do because you're still learning. And then every
Yeah.
other dive you do subsequent to that's going to be great.
So when you get to the Grand Cayman, you're like, what is this? But back to your original
Exactly.
question.
Yeah.
I think it is just, what's the best way to say it? You know what? I don't know. I don't know. But if I had to just make something up right now. I think it's just access. For me, growing up, it's just something you don't do. Like I didn't know any other black divers. I mean, I didn't think it was extra human to dive. I don't know any black divers. I
So
don't
here's it.
know.
So let me. I'll tell you what my theory is, but let me put it into context first of all. When your friends that you grew up with hear you dive, what's the first thing they say?
Hey, why you doing Ubuntu, eh?
Exactly. So and similarly, when you go to the beach, or if you remember when you went to the beach as a kid, what was the
Don't
first thing
don't enter that water. If you enter the water, you die.
you died? Tony, actually, yeah. Considering that I've been working from home since February, I ain't had to cut my hair for shit. Yeah, so I literally cut it this. I was scared. I cut my hair this morning.
You're right, Tony. Like it's true. And Letitia, we'll get back to your question in a minute, but this is a very interesting topic because since we met, you introduced me to Kabudu. There's Tolulope. It's
So
also
look,
in
right,
it.
yeah, he's
We
either half
have,
time.
yeah, we have actually know like two, three divers in Nigeria.
Yeah, there's
In
a bunch
Nigeria,
of people. There's a bunch of people in Nigeria. But yeah, it's
Kola. Yes,
Paula.
exactly.
Paula, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's my main man. That's my dive buddy of life. But anyway, it's been people are always there's a stigma associated with it. Oh, black people don't swim. Black people, water is not for them. They shouldn't be doing it. And the truth is, it's for everybody,
Yeah.
right? There's a freedom in that. There's a freedom in there that you will never get anywhere else. It's a whole new world there, and it's you explore it.
It's amazing because it's one of those things you're experiencing and you can go pretty much in any direction. It's multidimensional. Um, I was telling Trey earlier
Oh,
today that
Letitia, Mexico. Mexico was my favorite place to go diving. Okay,
that was my second favorite. That
Mexico
was
and the
my second
Seychelles.
favorite. That was my second favorite. It's one of those things where you're experiencing and you're like, I mean, there are just some moments underwater you're like, wow, just wow, you know. And growing up, it's not like our parents or community meant any harm. It was just conditioning.
Conditioning. They were afraid.
Yeah,
They,
just
everything that they said to us was based on fear, right? And everything that I'm saying now, everything that Ed's saying right now is based on a place of knowing, right? I hang
and,
out and play around with sharks all the time.
yeah. And I mean, there's Shark Week going on right now. Like Mike Tyson, who is I wouldn't even call him a diver. They just like fix him up, get him on the water. It's surviving with sharks. I remember going to the beach and thinking, I actually had that moment when I was thinking, kind of like, what's on the other side? Like, oh, if I go that way, I could probably get to Brazil. If I go that way, Argentina. If I go that way, like I was just imagining it that way. But to our parents or our generations before us, it was more like, ooh, just like stay away, do your thing, just get it done. Be an engineer, be a doctor, kind of move on, kind of thing. But that's why I think it's the conversation we're having right now is very important because I've been in positions where I've had people ask me like, or tell me like, "Oh my God, I really want to do what you're doing." I'm like, there's really nothing stopping you. Like you just need to commit to it.
Yeah.
It does take some practice, but you need to commit to it.
It's a commitment. Yeah, it's a commitment. Like with anything you do, right?
Right.
You're always going to start from a place of difficulty because you haven't done it before, and the more times you do it, the easier, the better it gets, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just practice.
Oh, we're not googling the answers, but quick note, Tony. Let me tell you one funny story. So when I started my open water, so there's a progressive path. Open water, you go to advanced, whatever. When I
You
started my
got to
open
tell them
water,
this is Paddy though. This is
yeah,
the
this is
Paddy way. So there's a bunch of others as well. There's SSI. There is BC, S,
SDI.
SDI. I think there is.
I could barely swim. Like I just could barely swim, and that's because I used to sneak away If my mother sees this, well, that's what I did. I snuck off to go to the pool in Ikeja airport hotel. It was like an Olympic-sized pool, 30 feet deep, and I was just like, there. I've been there, and people have been pulled out like drowned, but I kind of figured out how to swim from there, and I could barely swim when I started my open water. But when I wanted to do my dive master, which is kind of like the first level of being a professional, Trey is an instructor, so it was like two, three levels above that. When I crossed over to DM is when you had to do like the watermanship, something like that. That's when they're like,
Water
all right,
skills.
the water skills. You got to swim, 1,200 feet. And I'm like, the way my leg is set up right now, I
It's
kind
not
of
really
need a
working.
break. So I actually went to adult swimming classes to really get my swimming up to grade. Like, put fins on me, put wetsuit on me, I'll do it. But at the time, I had to like, hey, y'all got swim classes? You got swim classes? They're like, is it for your son? I'm like, no, it's for me. Like, I
Me.
gotta swim. So,
Yeah.
it's never too late. You can always do it if you really, really, really want to.
So I got quite lucky actually on my swim test. Um,
How's
so
that?
it's a 400-meter swim for your dive master, right? So you have to be able to swim 400 meters, snorkel
Right.
and fins. So we were on a dive boat in, I think it was I think it possibly was Egypt. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it was. Yes, it was Egypt. And some guys had just come up from a dive, and they were like, "Dolphins, dolphins! There are dolphins everywhere." And where were the dolphins? They were on the other side of this tiny reef. So people were jumping in the water, and like those who still had what's it called, had just come back out. They were jumping back into the water with their
With their
masks
fins
and
and
goggles on,
everything.
with their fins on, and just swimming for it. So I joined them and jumped in, and just carried on swimming. Finally, get there after like battering through the waves and whatnot. Get there, nothing. And then
No,
it was
no
like an
dolphins.
epic long, no dolphins. So I was like, oh, screw that. Swam back to the boat. So I got back absolutely shattered. And then I just asked, I asked the instructor on the boat, one of the instructors who had come from the UK, and I was like, how far do you think that is? And he goes, probably about, I don't know, 180, 200 meters. I was like, what, one way? He goes, yeah. I go, cool.
There
Okay,
goes
can you
my
tap
water
this off,
skills.
please? Which he did. And I was like thankful. I mean,
That's awesome.
it's more of a thing. It's more of a story thing, really. At the end of the day, I mean, I can swim 6,000 meters, no dramas. But that was actually just a cool thing to get signed off.
I mean, there are two main reasons we dive: to look cool and to tell good stories.
Oh yes,
Everything else, like life support and coming back alive, that's all
all secondary.
secondary. Yeah,
Like I
it's
say to
about
myself
looking cool.
sometimes, how vain are you, Trey? Because if you died looking cool, I'm okay. Just use that. Don't just use some shitty picture as my obituary thing.
He's
Use
like, as long as it's not like this.
use something decent. Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy. What
Take a
what do you
picture for my
think?
Instagram page.
So anywhere after COVID is over, right?
Yeah.
Um, we have a couple. If anyone's hearing that watching this, that wants to dive, people have for some of us, there are barriers. Like, this is not my thing. This is kind of like both things.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for them? Anyone that's looking to learn how to dive, get into diving, exploring on the water, or any adventure?
So
What would you tell them?
can I do a quick Lewis Hamilton right now quickly? I don't know if you guys know Lewis Hamilton. I want to do a quick Lewis
Formula
Hamilton.
One driver, British
Yeah,
kid, black kid.
amazing, amazing, amazing driver. My favorite driver. I want to do a Lewis Hamilton right now. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the people that have joined. So we just saw Hans Dive Shop right now. Hey, thank you very much for joining us. And
Absolutely.
and I think our longest guest to say hi again, Tony of Life. We'll come back to that underwater documentary because that's something that's currently in the works from my perspective, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But what would we say to somebody that is wanting to get into diving, right?
Hmm.
Wanting to get into diving. Um, look up your local dive shop. The community is huge. Um, Park your fear at the door. There really is nothing to be afraid of.
Mm.
Um, your There's nothing to be afraid of. One, look up your local diving shop and give them a ring and say, "Hey, this is what I want to do," and they will put you through the best training that's out there.
Yep.
One thing to always bear in mind is the importance of listening. If you don't actively listen, you'll probably struggle learning because
Mm.
you have no reference points for diving, and you can be the world's most amazing swimmer. It's not helping you for your diving because in diving we don't use our arms,
Yeah.
right? So knowing how to
Word.
kick becomes something, and these are things they'll tell you on your course. So I would say park your fear at the door, call your local dive school, start learning how to dive, and learn how to actively listen because you have no reference points for what diving is or what it feels like underwater. So your instructor is going to tell you things that you should do, and you really need to do them exactly as he says you should do them, or she says you should do them. Because if you try and do your own thing, it might work, right? It might work once,
Or
it
it
might
might
work
not.
twice. It's probably not going to work in the long run, right? And
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick example. Do you remember when you were doing your regulator recovery for the first time, right?
You're like, really? That's gonna work? Really?
Oh shoot, it works.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I go to places now and I dive in. When I drop the DM card, it's almost like I don't know if it's, you're an instructor, you probably know. I give them the card, they're like, no, okay. And then on the first dive, they give me some random thing like, hey, your mask is foggy. Do you mind if okay, my mask
No.
doesn't fog up. Like some random drill, like just to see how I react to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm like, oh yeah. He was like in Cuba, for example, the local dive guy, scientific diver, he was like, oh yeah, my mask is foggy, telling me. I'm like, underwater, like, your mask is foggy. I'm like, no, it's not. He was like, give it to me. I'll clean it up. There's this local herb we use. I'm
No.
like, sure. Okay. Are you done? Okay. Thank you. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're on. it's like, it's like a random checkout thing that they
Yeah,
do.
it can be like that. I think the last trip I went on, unfortunately, which was November last year, we were in Djibouti, somewhere
Mm,
in Africa, which is another amazing place to go diving, right? Djibouti is brilliant. Anybody wants to go to Djibouti, give me a shout, and I can hook you up with some really good people there. Um, and I think the week before we arrived on the boat, they had a new dive guide, and he had a really difficult group of people. Some relatively old seniors, and then some beginner divers. One of them, which was clearly not in the best physical shape,
hmm.
and at the end of the day, they basically kind of got stranded and lost for about 6 hours. Um,
Underwater?
Not underwater, on the
Oh,
surface, basically,
just, yeah.
on the surface, and then they basically ended up getting picked up after 6 hours. So I mean, uh, all in all, everybody was hunky dory fine.
Yeah.
Everybody went diving again the next day. So it was a bit of an inconvenience, but it was great. But the instructor was very wary, right, and all that kind of stuff. So when it came to our turn, by the way, we found this out after the fact. But when it came to our turn,
Right.
99% of all the divers were instructors. Yeah, so they had a bit of a mishap on the week before we joined the boat. People got stranded
In
for about six
Djibouti.
hours, yeah, in Djibouti before they got picked up again. But eventually, all the people that had the issue went diving again the next day. So when we got on the boat, 90% of the divers on the boat, 99% of everybody was an instructor, and some of these guys have been instructors for years. And when I say years, we're talking about 15, 20 years. So some even own dive schools, right? And
Wow.
so I've learned a lot from hanging out with these guys over the years. And for me, it's always an honor and a pleasure to dive with them. I picked up all my habits from these guys. And then as soon as we about to get in the water, the guide's like, "So who wants to follow a guide?" And everybody's like, "We don't want to follow a guide. We don't we don't need a guide.
We just wanted to do our thing.
We're
Typical
just give
California.
us the briefing. We'll, take the dive briefing. Tell us what we shouldn't do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and we're fine. We'll go about and do our thing." So
Hmm.
eventually, they kind of twig that, since nobody wants to follow a guide, they'll just sort of like jump in the water with us and kind of like sort of force the guide along. Every now and then, everybody just like pairs up and they just disappear. So the guy's like looking everywhere, completely frantic, right? Wondering where everybody's gone. But we're like, dude, listen, we're okay, right? We're okay. The one
It,
minute can't find anybody. We look around for a minute, surface.
it's yeah. I mean, there are things like that. I've been on a dive with someone that actually oh, so somebody else had an issue coming down. Then I lost my camera. Then I went to help I lost my camera going to help the person who's trying to descend. And the third person came up and like, oh, my camera's lost. I'm gonna help this guy. Next thing you know, like, oh, let's look for my camera. And then he just kind of goes off. And like, and me and the other guy were like, let's just kind of track our way back to the boat. He just kind of takes
Yeah.
off. I assume, like, if you don't see anybody, you can look around and come back up. But it's funny how the drills and, like you said, it's training, like things like that. A lot of smart people kind of sat down, like really thought about different scenarios. I mean, I don't really have any beef, but I have my thing with some of the training drills, like really. But there are also a lot of things that have been really well thought out. Like, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that.
Do that.
It's exactly.
Everything's all taken care of, right? I mean, we're looking at years and years and years of course development, and it's kind of like aircraft safety, right?
Exactly.
For
Protocols.
every for every accident there is, the next flight's so much safer.
Like if there's no protocol for that scenario, then I guess, aliens have arrived and it's something we've never seen before. So
I I taught a guy once who his biggest fear, actually I had two relatively fearful people to
oh
teach.
wow.
One guy was I think it was an Asian guy or Pakistani or something like that, and I was asking students, what made you want to learn to dive? And this guy's like, well, he's always been afraid of water, so he taught it. He went and got swimming lessons and learned how to swim because he was afraid of water, and now he just wants to take the next step, diving. I'm thinking, okay,
Hmm.
yeah, this is great. So I had him. So it was effectively what we call a discover scuba diving. So you just experience scuba diving. You don't really have to know too much. Just be comfortable in water and whatnot.
Like Discover
And we
Scuba.
yeah, discover scuba. So
Yeah.
discover scuba session, or we call it discover scuba session.
Yeah, in America, Discover Scuba. You guys call
Discover
it
scuba.
Experience Scuba?
Yeah, that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Um, so we normally do that in a pool back in the UK, and basically, I mean, if you're 5 foot tall, the water comes up to your waist, right?
Yeah,
And
pretty
that's
much.
pretty much it. So we're now talking grown adults. Um, so everything is hunky dory. We start off in the shallows, and then I'm looking at the guys and I'm thinking, okay, you can go to slightly deeper water, right? So the
Right.
maximum depth in the pool is 3 meters, and that's about it. But as soon as we started approaching the deep end, he started freezing, and he was really, really freaked out. So the rest of them managed to do the swim around in the deep end. He never did. So at the end, so I handed him off to another a DM um, next to me, and sort of supervised him in the shallows while I was, watching from the deep end with the other guys, and it
Hmm.
was great. So at the end of the session, he comes to me and he goes, "You know what? I want to do this again properly. Can I get you as just an instructor?" And I was like, "Okay, cool, no problems." come through next week. So next week he comes through. So just one-on-one session.
Right.
We're gonna go do this discovery session again. And I'm like, okay, so what are you afraid of? And he says he's afraid he's going to sink.
It's
I'm
a
like,
valid fear. I
right.
I
I
had the
said,
same fear.
you're afraid you're going to sink. And I said, okay, but you're wearing you're wearing a BCD, so you can't sink. And he goes, yeah, I know. I said, okay, fine, no problems. Let's try and dispel this fear. So I made him, he put on the BCD. We were in shallow water right by the side of the pool, fully inflate the BCD. He fully inflates the BCD. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you £50 if you can sit down at the bottom of the pool. Mind you, the water is sort of like waist level. If you
Right.
can let your butt touch the ground from here, I will give you $50. He spent about 10 minutes trying to do that.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'll give you $100 if you use the side of the pool to force yourself into the ground wearing a fully inflated BCD. Spent another 5 minutes trying to do that. Didn't succeed. And I was like, okay, you know why you didn't succeed? He's like, no. I said, because you're fighting the law of physics, which you cannot fight.
Exactly. I was gonna say it's just pure physics when you think about it. But when you think about it with sane mind, you've gone through the training. But as a new person,
It
that
just freaked
was
out.
my biggest fear. Like I tell people like, oh man, I sink more than other people because my bones dancer and yada yada yada. But in
Not true.
reality, I'm just making stuff up. You know,
Yeah.
that's a great analogy. That's
Yeah. So after that, then he realized that he was in control of whether he, sank or he didn't. And
hmm
so it kind of like took the whole inflation deflation thing, which kind of sounds wildly complicated, and it just really broke it down for him. And you know what? By the end of the session, he was, we were all sort of diving around the deep end of the pool, and he was really happy.
that's
Right.
amazing. Because I have recent divers that yeah, everybody has some people. I had issues descending the first few times I went diving. Um, and for the most part, what we're really fighting is not the physics, which is really what we should just break down, but it's really just the mental barrier. Like, you're trying to go down, maybe your fifth dive, your 10th dive, your 20th dive. It took me maybe 65 dives to like really say, all right, I got this. I got this, man. But
Yeah.
the first few dives, you're trying to deflate and get underwater, and your mind is telling you, you are crazy. I am not going under that water.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
your mind is telling you you are insane. I
You're
am not
insane.
going under that water.
But your
Um,
mind lies. That's the thing. Your mind is just a cheap liar. It lies like a cheap rug, and it's just
because it's conditioning, right?
it's conditioning. Yeah, you've
And
watched one too many movies. You've heard too many stories that really don't make
mhm.
any sense.
We've seen a lot
Um,
of Hollywood that just tells us lies.
yeah, yeah. I look at Shadow Producer says my
Hey,
first direction is like
hey,
wait.
hey, you know what? Don't feel too bad. Don't feel too bad because on so I went through open water thinking I'm just gonna do open water and kind of move on. But I did open water, I did advance right away. Then my first fun dive after advanced, I went down and the night before, all I kept thinking about, I'm gonna shoot up. I'm gonna shoot up. I'm gonna shoot up. Guess what happened? The
You
next
shut up.
day, I shut up. I shut all the way up from like 35
Yeah,
feet.
all
Don't
the
tell
way up.
anybody. You'll take my cert card. But these stories are what kind of makes us. That's where you get the balls to be able to tell people to like, nah, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You should probably do that. You should probably do that. And if anybody's just joining, Trey is a dive instructor. He is currently in Singapore. He has been locked down and hasn't gone diving since what, November?
November.
Oh my God.
I've cancelled
Um,
4 dive trips, and there's another one about to. Well, there's another one that I just cancelled as well, so that's going to be 5.
we were gonna go dive in Africa, but that COVID said hold my beer. That's not gonna happen.
He's
Trey
standing,
just
stand in the corner.
Trey just canceled a trip in October, um, but I'm in Los Angeles, so I went diving last month. Maybe I'll go diving again this month. Trey's like, I hate you, man. I hate you.
So, so, so just a quick one, right? So there's a couple of questions on the chat because I got
Yeah,
to jet in a few moments. It's a work day for me already, right?
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. I completely understand
so
it. Thank you so much for your time.
two things. So shadow producer, most problems with my ears while wearing my hood makes perfectly good sense. Your hood is probably tied over your ears and you can't equalize, right? So this is something that has worked for me. Okay, you probably have a neoprene hood. What you can do is if you can get like a hole punch and you
Hmm.
mark out where your ears are and you hole punch through the neoprene, just a bunch of circles around there, it will let you equalize a lot easier. Okay, just a bunch of holes, so you got like a pattern of holes around where the hood comes over your ears. So just put a few hole punches in there, evenly spaced out, because if you make a mess of it, the neoprene is going to rip in that area, right? And you really want to use a hole punch so the integrity of the material still stays. So you can do that around there. You can do that around there as well. Similarly, you find out that hoods that have a vent on the top, they also work out quite well. My favorite one is and my favorite one is the waterproof. The waterproof makes some awesome hoods, and they've got a nice little vent at the top.
Hmm.
So you know what, bubbles can escape and air can escape and all that kind of good stuff.
Mr. Trey dropping gems.
Yeah,
Dropping gems. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I know it was gonna be a quick chat, but we ended up just talking way longer.
I know, right? We need to do this thing. We need to do it again.
We need to do it again. Absolutely. We'll do it again. We'll feature a diver every week for the next few weeks. I don't know how long. Brothers and sisters, we'll just just drop knowledge and drop gems and just have a chat.
Yeah,
But I know you
let's
gotta
do
go.
that.
I know you gotta go on your day. So where can we find you? Anybody watching this? Where can we find you on the internet?
I'm currently in stalker mode on Instagram, but so basically, I'm not posting much of late. But you can get me on Instagram, profile one, so that's PR0FILE1. You can pretty much get me at that address, that name, pretty much anywhere, except email. Emails Trey at treymujak.com. Instagram is as I just mentioned. Facebook is as I just mentioned as well, I believe. And that's pretty much it, really.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. But a quick one for Tony. Yeah, the documentary. We are meant to be filming footage. So this whole Africa trip that Ed and I have been talking about, right now, it is the footage that we were going to capture is going to be part of this documentary.
absolutely.
Ed, for Ed, this is all kind of new anyway, but he'd have found out on the trip. So uh, I've got a whole treatment written out for this thing and the plans for it and the places we're going to go. So you know what? If you you want to hit me up on the side, then let me know. Right? The whole thing is planned out. The structure, everything is all planned out. We just need to go get the footage. We've got some of it already, but we need it nice and polished. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Well,
and we do need a presenter as well. So if you haven't done any diving, then you're a perfect candidate because
perfect candidate.
because
Let's
we
get him salty.
yes, we're getting salty. So yeah, just ping me on the side, and we can make a plan.
All right, guys. Thank you, Trey, for your time. You're a busy man.
No
You got a
problem.
whole day ahead of
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
We'll do this
All right, guys.
again. Do this in a different way.
Most def.
Blessings.
Peace out, dudes. Take care, people. Later on.